Hello student, welcome back. It is lecture 7, module 1, microcontroller and embedded system. Sangita Roy, assistant professor, electronics and communication engineering department, Narula Institute of Technology. Features and architecture of microcontroller PIC and its application. Peripheral interface controller PIC is a microcontroller developed by Microchip. PIC microcontroller is fast and easy to implement program when we compare other microcontroller like 8051. The ease of programming and easy to interfacing with other peripherals, PIC become useful and successful microcontroller. Peripheral interface controller PIC is microcontroller developed by Microchip. PIC microcontroller is fast and simple to implement program when we contrast other microcontrollers like 8051. The ease of programming and simple to interfacing with other peripherals, PIC becomes successful microcontroller. PIC microcontroller is fast and simple to implement when we contrast other microcontroller like 8051. The ease of programming and simple to interface with other peripheral, PIC become successful microcontroller. We know that microcontroller is an integrated chip which consists of RAM, ROM, CPU, timers, counters, etc. PIC is a microcontroller which also consists of RAM, ROM, CPU, timers, counters, ADC analog to digital converters, DAC digital to analog converter. PIC also supports the protocol like CAN, SPI, UART for interfacing with other peripherals. PIC mainly used modified Harvard architecture and also supports RISC reduced instruction set computer. By the above specification, RISC and Harvard, we can easily that PIC is faster than the 8051 based controller which made up of von Neumann architecture. So, this is how the PIC chip is showing, it is showing in the figure. We know that microcontroller is an integrated chip which is consist of RAM, ROM, CPU, timer and counters. The PIC is microcontroller which as well consists of RAM, ROM, CPU, timer, counter, analog to digital converter, DAC digital to analog converter. PIC microcontroller also supports the protocol like CAN, SPI, UART for interfacing with additional peripherals. PIC mostly use Harvard architecture. So, this is the PIC microcontroller architecture diagram. Basically, this is here one oscillator of 0 to 20 megahertz, internal oscillator is there, SPI, USART, timer T0, T1, T2, SFR, RAM 368, program memory stack 8K, E2PROM 256, this is the memory block. Reset, there is power supply 2.2 to 5.5 volt, port A, port B, port C, port D, port E is there and IO port using 25 milliampere. AD converter is there, V reference voltage is there, CCP1, CCP2, pulse width modulation technology is used over there, modulation technique. CPU is of 35 instruction, interrupts are over there and interrupts are connected through port D and port E. This is the basic idea. CPU is not different from the other microcontroller CPU. PIC microcontroller CPU consists of arithmetic logic unit, memory unit, control unit. accumulator, etc. We know that ALU mainly used for arithmetic operation and taking the logic decision. Memory used for storing the instruction which is to process and also storing instruction after processing. Control unit is used for controlling all the peripherals which are connected to the CPU, both internal peripherals and external peripherals. Accumulator is used for storing the results used for further processing. And PIC microcontrollers support the RISC architecture, that is reduced instruction set computer. If a computer or controller is used that is support reduced instruction set, you should remember the following points. RISC has very fast few instruction, almost 35, which are used in the program. Length of the instruction is small and fixed and takes same amount of time for processing. As the instruction is small, it will take less time to process, in other words CPU will be fast. Compiler need not be complex and debugging will be very easy in the programming point of view. Memory. Memory module in the PIC consists of RAM, ROM and stack. RAM, we know that RAM, random access memory, which is a volatile memory used for storing the data temporarily in its registers. RAM memory is divided into banks. In each banks we have number of registers. The RAM register is divided into two types. They are general purpose register GPR and special purpose register SPR. Now GPR, general purpose register, as the name implies, for general uses. For example, if we want to multiply any two numbers using PIC, we generally take two registers for storing the numbers and multiply the two numbers and store the result in another register. So, general purpose register will not have any special function or any special permission. CPU can easily access the data in the registers. SPR, special function register, are having the special functions. When we use this register, they will act accordingly to the function assigned to them. They cannot be used like normal register. For example, you cannot use status register for storing the data. Status register are used for showing the status of the program of operation. User cannot change the function of the special function register. The function is given by the vendor at the time of manufacturing. ROM. We know that ROM, read-only memory, is a non-volatile memory and used for storing the data permanently. In microcontroller, ROM will store the complete instruction or program. According to the Microcontroller Act, ROM is also called the program memory. In the memory, user will write the program for microcontroller and save it permanently and get executed by the CPU. According to the instruction executed by the CPU, the PIC microcontroller will perform the task. In ROM, there are different types which are used in different PIC microcontroller. EEPROM. In the normal ROM, we can write the program for only one time. We can reuse the microcontroller for another time, whereas in EEPROM, electrically erasable programmable read-only memory, we can program the ROM for a number of times. This is the advantage. Now, flash memory. Flash memory is also PROM, in which we can read, write, erase the program more than 10,000 times. Mostly PIC microcontroller uses this type of ROM. Now, the stack. When an interrupt occurs, PIC has to first execute the interrupt, and the existing process addresses which is being executed is stored in the stack. After completing the interrupt execution, PIC will call the process with the help of address which is stored in stack and get executed the process. Now, bus. Bus is mainly used for transferring and receiving the data from one peripheral to another. There are two types of buses, data bus and address bus. Data bus, it is used to transfer or receive only the data. Address bus, it is used to transmit the memory address from the peripherals to the CPU. I/O pins are used for interfacing the external peripherals. UART and USART is serial communication protocol which is used for interfacing serial devices like GPS, GSM, IR, Bluetooth, etc. Now we come in the advantages of PIC microcontroller. They are reliable and manufacturing of PIC percentage is very less and performance of the PIC is very fast because of its RISC architecture. Power consumption is very less when compared to other microcontrollers. When we see in the programmer point of view, interfacing is very easy. Also we can connect analog devices directly without any extra circuitry and use them. Programming is very easy when compared to other microcontrollers. Disadvantage of PIC microcontroller. The length of the program will be big because of using RISC, that is for 35 instructions. Program memory is not accessible and only one single accumulator is present. So, these are the little bit of brief idea of PIC microcontroller, and in the next class we will discuss this in detail. A microprocessor system consists of data input, storage, processing and output devices under the control of a CPU. The main unit of a desktop PC is a modular system consists of the motherboard, power supply and disk drives. The motherboard carries the microprocessor CPU, RAM, BIOS, ROM, bus controller and I/O interfaces. The CPU communicates with the main system chips via a shared set of address and data bus lines. The microcontroller device provides most of the features of a conventional microprocessor system on one chip. So, main difference between AVR, RAM, 8051 and PIC microcontroller. So, bus width for 8051 it is 8 bit, for PIC it is 8, 16, 32, for AVR it is 8 or 32, for ARM it is 32 bit, mostly 60 bit also available. Communication protocol UART, USART, SPI, I2C, and in PIC it is PIC, UART, USART, LIN, CAN, Ethernet, SPI, 1 to S. AVR, USART, USART, SPI, I2C, special purpose AVR support CAN, USB and Ethernet, UART, USART, LIN, I2C, SPI and so on. Speed is I2 clock or instruction cycle, and speed of PIC is 4 clock per instruction cycle. AVR is 1 clock per instruction cycle and ARM is 1 clock per instruction cycle. Memory is ROM, SRM, flash. For in case of PIC it is SRAM, flash. In case of AVR it is flash, SRM, EEPROM, ARM it is flash, SDRAM, EEPROM. ISA, CLS and some features of RISC, it is RISC, it is RISC. Memory architecture for 8051 von numeric architecture, PIC is Harvard architecture, and for AVR it is modified RIS, and for ARM it is modified Harvard architecture. Power consumption 8051 average, PIC is lowest, AVR low, ARM also low. So, families 8051 variants for PIC it is PIC I6, PIC 17, 18, 24, 32. For it is TINI, Atomic, X Mega, special purpose AVR. For ARM it is ARM V4, 6, 7 and series. Community vast, PIC is very good, AVR also very good, ARM also vast. Manufacturer NXP, Atmel, Silicon Lab, Dallas, Cypress, Infineon, etc. And for PIC it is microchip average, and for ATMEG it is Atmel, and ARM it is Apple, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, and so on. Cost, it is very low, PIC is average, ATMEG it is average, and ARM it is low. Other features are known for its standard, it is chip based and all are chip based, and ARM is very high speed operation. Popular microcontrollers at 89C51, and for PIC it is PIC 18XX8, PIC 16F88X, PIC 32MXX, ATMEG it is ATMEG 8 1632, Arduino community, and ARM it is LPC2148, ARM Cortex, and so on. So, these are the references. Thank you.